All right, we're going to switch over to this flurry of activity we had at the deadline last week. Like I said, no blockbuster moves really, but it seemed like everybody was moving. Now, do you think this is because of that extra wild card spot? I know we touched on it a little bit last week, but do you think this influx of activity at the deadline is because of this extra wild card spot and everybody in the NL minus the Marlins, Giants, and Rockies are in the wild card hunt?
Yeah, I think that as much as the additional team kind of makes more teams believe they're in it, I think the flip side was true this year, where so many teams are in it. I mean, statistically, I think the Cubs are the furthest back of the group that made trades, and they're like 4 games out. Statistically, so many teams were in it, and you saw so many more teams active because of that. You know, there's also the teams that were like clearly in it to make a difference, and there's the other teams that were kind of like nibbling around the edges to maybe make a minor improvement. So maybe they didn't like really improve, but they maybe filled a hole, or they were building with an eye towards next year. I think there are different layers of teams and being involved in this, but I do think where so many teams right now are still involved, that you saw far more teams actively buying than we've seen in a long time. That created a flurry of activity that we haven't seen in years.
Yeah. All right, so I'll just ask you straight up. Who do you think are winners in your eyes at the deadline here?
I mean, I think there's a few teams that fared well here. I think the Orioles came out of this in pretty good shape. They made some additions where they needed to. I think the Dodgers filled some pretty good holes for them too, especially in that bullpen with some injuries.
I just don't get the middle infielders they're all bringing in.
I honestly think they're looking for guys with versatility so they can rotate them around, and that does tell me when Mookie comes back, he's going back to the outfield.
And they just DFA'd Kevin Biggio like right before we came on.
I was waiting for that. I've been waiting for somebody to go. I think for them it was, if we can get these depth pieces cheap, let's bring a bunch of them in and see who works.
Yeah, that's fair.
And in most cases it costs them nothing, but like getting a guy like Kopech in that bullpen, and like they made some moves that I think are really going to help them. Yeah. And I think, I feel like those two teams did really well. I feel like the Pirates did a little bit. The Cubs, I think, missed an opportunity to really improve. I feel like the Yankees missed an opportunity to really improve. I mean, I don't love the Jazz Chisholm trade. I don't think it's a bad trade. I think he injected energy immediately.
4 home runs in 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, he injected some energy pretty quick, but I mean that's not going to last. And I think that the Diamondbacks made a couple of sneaky good moves. The Red Sox made a couple of moves that I think were more geared towards next year than this year. And I was happy to see a team like the Blue Jays, although I wanted to see them do more, actually make some moves and unload some pieces.
Yeah. So,
but I will say the Mariners, give the Mariners some credit. They made some moves. I don't think they made enough, but they at least showed they were serious.
Yeah. So I'll start with my Diamondbacks because Christian Walker goes down. That's a huge loss for the Diamondbacks.
Massive.
Josh Bell, does he fill Christian Walker's shoes? No. But his first swing as a Diamondback, he hits it into the Allegheny. So I mean, welcome back to Pittsburgh, Josh Bell with the Diamondbacks and homers on his first swing. He hit 2 home runs in his Diamondbacks debut from each side of the plate there. I think that's a nice piece that gives them a little versatility because he is a switch hitter. I mean, Jock Peterson's on a tear right now.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to platoon him. So he's hitting really well.
How long is Walker out for?
I don't know. It's an oblique, so you never know how long those are.
It's one of those you do it like 2 weeks at a time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then the addition of AJ Puck in that bullpen definitely helps them out.
It's a good move.
Erod is supposed to be coming back. He's with the team. So I don't know when his start's supposed to be, but he's with the team right now. So that's another starter you're adding in. I think the Diamondbacks are in good shape. They just took a series away from the Pirates. So they're only 4 games back of the Dodgers in the NL West right now. So they're making that a race.
And then did I see that the Diamondbacks have demoted Sewald? He's no longer the closer. Are they going to put Puck there?
They put Brian Thompson.
Oh, okay.
right now. He's kind of that 3/4
Yeah.
sidearm weird thing that he's got going on.
That funky
Yes,
delivery.
yeah. Seawald said he needed a break mentally from the closer role, so he's more of the seventh, eighth inning guy to get
Yeah.
them to.
He's had
And
a
I
up and
don't think
down.
they're putting him in high stress situations. Period. Like even if the game's on the line, I don't think they're bringing him in. So,
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he'll get back to form. He'll be fine.
Oh yeah, he will. I
Um,
mean, he's too good to be to lose it completely, but he's been really up and down.
and you may laugh at me for this, and everybody watching may laugh at me for this, but I think the Marlins won that Rogers deal.
I think the Marlins. If you're not looking at this year, I think the Marlins won the trade deadline. They brought in so many. You look
It's
down that list of prospects
crazy.
brought in. They brought in, was it 5 or 6 top 5 prospects and like 15 top 20s. Like
I
the prospects they landed are absolutely ridiculous. They stole. I mean, and then you had the Orioles who are just throwing prospects around because they've got so many of them.
you
I, I just, I mean, I think the Orioles did a lot to help the team this year, but they absolutely unloaded some prospects they didn't have to.
you gave up Stowers and Norby for Rogers.
Yeah.
Those two guys are really good and have been
They should
playing
get you more
really
than
well.
that.
Absolutely. So I think the Marlins really won for,
Yeah.
like you said, 3 years down the road.
Yeah. When you look back in 2027, you're gonna be like, man, the Marlins were smart to make those trades, but for the next couple of years, it's not going to do anything for them.
It was just hilarious because as I'm seeing these deals roll through, I'm like, are the Marlins even fielding a team for the rest of the year? Like what? Who do they got left?
I don't think they
Jake
care.
Jake Berger?
Jake,
Is that the only starter you got left?
I'd say Tim Anderson, but they dumped him, so they got, you got nothing left. I mean, Brian De La Cruz went. I mean, everybody went.
Everybody. Yeah.
But again, like, do the Marlins care right now? No, because in a couple of years they're going to be laughing with a AAA roster that's absolutely loaded.
Yeah. All right. And now I'm going to bring you to the Tampa Bay Rays. This is the first time we've seen an absolute fire sale from the Tampa Bay Rays
in a long time.
A long time, right? Because I mean, they're really good about bringing the prospects up, fielding them. You might lose a few to free agency, but this is the first time we've seen a complete fire sale from the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah. And like key pieces for them went. I mean, Arozarena was in many, as much as he can be a fool at times, he was the personality and kind of the heart of that team. Isaac Paredes was a guy you were planning to build around. I mean, you let some guys go. I mean, and then you basically unloaded your bullpen and everything else. But
yeah, Zach Eflin gone.
These are guys that were these were cornerstones the last few years that you let go. And I think the Rays are realizing that, that window's closed. McClanahan, that certainly set him back. Him missing all this time. They haven't hit. Losing Wander Franco was never part of their plan. So like this team's window closed, I think, abruptly because it wasn't planned. And I think the front office realized we missed it because some things out of our control have happened and it's time to move on. And I'm sure next year they're going to roll out 10 more blue chip prospects that'll put them right back in contention, because that just seems they 3D print these guys somewhere. Yeah, right. And they'll be back in contention again. But I think the Rays were smart to look around and say, look, this isn't our year. We can't control what happened to us, but we can go get a return for guys that we're probably going to leave in the next year or two anyway. So let's go do that.
I'm surprised that Yandy Diaz is still there, to be completely honest. Like his name was thrown around, but he just never went.
All indications were they were shopping him hard and they just couldn't put a deal together and ran out of time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that goes in the offseason.
Yeah.
Unless they really do think they've got a window next year.
I don't know.
It depends on how many more blue chip prospects they 3D print and bring up next year. But
yeah,
it's been a really, this has not been a typical Rays season. They've had some serious problems.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the Red Sox?
I think the Red Sox did what the Red Sox do, and they made a couple moves to tell the fans they did. At the same time, I will say, like, you're getting Cassis back here soon. That's great. Connor Wong has really emerged. trading for Jansen and then DFAing Reese McGuire, to me, that's kind of like you traded for nothing. You got the same guy back. Jansen has a much higher ceiling than McGuire, but he's having a really bad season.
Yeah.
Priester is a project, and you move Nick York, a prospect who maybe sort of doesn't have a home. So like I look at what they did, and I kind of look at it and go, well, does it help this year? Not really. And they added Sims in the bullpen. It's like, it's again, like kind of nibbling around the edges. Did they do anything that like significantly changes their trajectory? No. But at the same time, you've had Houck, although he's come back to reality some, who's still pitching well. Crawford has come back to reality some, still pitching well. Bayo is Bayo. Like, I think if you're the Red Sox, you're looking around saying, like, we can hang around with this roster. We're not going to make any real noise in the playoffs if we were to get in. But we're not going to like fall way out necessarily. We're going to be just good enough to get by. And we're going to be getting Cassis back, which helps. So maybe they're going to kind of ride with who got them there and add a couple pieces on the edge.
And I mean, honestly, like you look at that roster right now, and I mean, it might be weird for me to say, but I don't think you really have pieces that you absolutely need, right? Like you don't have a glaring hole. You could argue maybe second base. That's kind of a revolving door. It has been forever.
And that was Nick York's future home.
Yeah. But I mean, you can find a second base. You can find a veteran second baseman. But with the way that the Red Sox are playing right now, you might not want to mess with that mojo that much. Yeah. I mean, Jarren Duran is killing it. Rafaela has stepped up in a huge way. Like he's really good.
He's had a really good last kind of like 45 days after. I remember we talked about it on the show. Like, is this who he is? Is he going to hit 208 and play inconsistent defense? Well, no, he's proven he's got a better bat than that. And his defense, although not stellar, he's a serviceable infielder, but really belongs in the outfield. Yeah. Yoshida's come back around, started hitting. You're getting Cassis back. Devers is Devers. You can kind of slot Wong back in at catcher. Will Abreu's come out of nowhere.
He might be in the discussion for Rookie of the Year. I think he's leading AL rookies in homers right now, I think.
The Red Sox. Sure. So when you started the season this year, I was hoping this team would be better than 500. My thought was 500, maybe a couple games better would be a good season out of them. This is a team that is potentially going to win, 87 games, 86, 87 games. Certainly a few games better than I thought, but you could potentially have a guy in Duran who gets MVP votes and a guy in Abreu who gets Rookie of the Year votes. Neither one of those guys was expected to be that kind of an impact player when the season started.
No.
And you could have a guy in Houck, if he continues to pitch well, who might even get some Cy Young votes.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I see any of those scenarios coming through.
There are two guys in the MLB that are must watch for me right now. And that is Jarren Duran. He's
every
electric.
night.
He's electric.
Every night.
Last game against Texas, he was 3 for 3 with a walk and like 3 stolen bases. I mean, like that's crazy.
Yep. You need a base hit, he gets it for you. You need a home run, he gets it for you. You need to make a crazy catch at the warning track, he's got it.
Yeah. And then my other guy right now is Ketel Marte. Like, yes, it's Diamondbacks bias for me.
Did you see his leadoff home run tonight?
He had another one tonight.
Yeah.
Dude, he had another
led the game off with a home run.
Dude, he's ridiculous. He leads the league in 9th inning home runs. He hit another one yesterday. He had 7 in the 9th inning this year. He is just, and he will get MVP votes as he should, but I mean, obviously it's Shohei's. But I mean, he's just so fun for me to watch right now. So I love those two. And I try to bounce back and forth if they're both on at the same time and try to catch them because those two are must watch for me. And I would say Aaron Judge is for Yankees fans, but he just gets walked all the time, which we'll get to in a minute. But those two for me are must watch.
Yeah, and Duran is a guy, again, like we talked about it last week, he's a guy that we all wrote off after that huge that mistake in center field and that horrendous second half of the season that he had when he questioned himself if he even wanted to play baseball anymore. And boy, did he kind of get things right. But he is an exciting player. Every night it's something with him. Ketel Marte is another guy who's he's fun to watch as well. Yeah. And what I enjoy about baseball right now is that you have so many of these young guys. You've got Witt and De La Cruz and Duran. Like, you just keep going down the list, all these young guys that are like becoming impact players.
Yeah.
it's going to be fun to watch these guys as they continue to develop and progress.
That's crazy. And just all the other young guys, like the second tier, if you will, young
Right.
guys coming up are also making impacts right away too.
Yep.
Like it's
All over the place.
I mean, you think about Reese Hines a couple weeks ago. We talked about him. He came
Yeah.
on. It was like 8 extra base hits in his first 4 games or 5 games. Like just ridiculous. So baseball's in a great spot right now when
Yep.
it comes to young talent for sure.
And you've got more, and that young talent's kind of spread around the league versus just being on a few teams. Like
Yes.
You've got every market's got somebody who's worth tuning in for every night.
Yeah. All right.
Except for Colorado and Florida.
Well.
And Chicago for the White Sox.
Well, I can't with that franchise right now. Man.
I don't even want to.
How about your Royals? How are you feeling about your Kansas City Royals right now?
If Bobby Witt can keep hitting it the way he's hitting, nobody's going to beat them. I mean, he is. Was it since July 1st? He's like number 1 in every stat except for home runs in the league. Like he's stealing bases, he's hitting for power, he's hitting in the gaps. His defense is ridiculous.
His average was like 491 in like the month of July or something like that.
Insanity what he's done the last five or so weeks. But I think again that team is proving that it's a good team, and they made a couple of moves which I was happy to see. Again, kind of like their offseason, they didn't go make any crazy splashy moves. They brought in a couple of good pieces. They continue to kind of build around, but I think that's a team that's going to hang around to the very end. And I think they're the final wild card as of right now. They've got that by a game or I think it's 2 games now. I think it's very likely they end up as a wild card, and that would be amazing. I don't think they're catching Cleveland. I do think Cleveland's going to come back to reality a little bit, but not going to catch Cleveland.
I was just going to bring them up because they made a sneaky good move too, getting Lane Thomas from the Nationals.
They did, and you got Cobb, and you've got players coming back. Like that team is potentially gonna get better. Again, we're seeing the Phillies really struggle right now. The Phillies have the hardest record in baseball in the second half. The Guardians are right behind them. This is going to be a gauntlet for the Phillies and the Guardians coming down the stretch, and you're going to see what that team is really made of. I mean, they went into Philly and took 2 out of 3. That's not exactly the easiest place to go in and play. And you saw one of those games.
I did. I was at that game. Yeah.
That team, they are unexciting. They are pretty plain, but they play incredibly good baseball.
Yes.
They play, they catch, they throw, they run, they hit, they pitch. Like there's nothing flashy about what they do. And they were the same way 2 years ago when they made that playoff run. There's nothing flashy about what they do. They just play solid baseball. And Stephen Vogt is the best manager choice they could have because he is so level-headed. And when they do hit a rough spot, he'll have everybody chilled right out. I don't think anybody's catching the Guardians, but I do think the Royals are going to grab a wild card spot.
Yeah. And you have such a veteran leader in Jose Ramirez that says he doesn't want to play anywhere else in his career but Cleveland. And that goes a long ways in the clubhouse.
Dude's a rock star there. He is like royalty.
Absolutely. And when you have a guy that's so cemented in your clubhouse, in your organization, other guys look to that and it just permeates greatness and consistency. And that's all the Guardians are right now. It's crazy. Like you said, there's not a single thing that is flashy about them.
No,
they don't have a 30 home run hitter. I mean, other than maybe J-Ram, but maybe Naylor eventually. But like, it's not excessive power. You got a ton of contact guys that get up there and just slap base hits all over the field, and they pitch well enough to win games. But it's their defense too. Like when I was in that game in Philly when the Guardians went in there, the Phillies are just booting the ball all over the place. And they might not be errors, but they're like throwing the ball just enough off the base where they can only get the force out at second, and then a double down the line scores a run. And, instead of getting out of the inning on an inning-ending double play, you're out of the inning giving up 1 run.
And that's been the Phillies' Achilles heel for the last 3 years, that they can pitch, they can hit, but they can't field. And if you get them in a tight game, they will make enough mistakes. Like you said, maybe not an error, but it's a double pump, or it's a bobble, or it's a throw just far enough where you can't turn the double play. Like that stuff adds up, and that's how innings get away from you. And they just consistently do it. And I think they've gotten better this year because Trey Turner was miserable last year, and he's certainly had a much better season this year.
Yeah.
But they still struggle to just consistently make routine plays.
Yeah.
And that's why a team like the Guardians can come in there and take 2 out of 3 from them, because they're not giving you any extra outs. If they can turn 2, they're turning 2.
Right.
There's no second chances there.
Yeah.